A number of people for some time now have asked if I would do a session on figures. And so this is what I'm doing now. But in preparing this, I realized that this is quite a large subject. I'm also aware that a number of people feel a little bit daunted or lacking in confidence, maybe in figure drawing and painting, or putting figures into their work. So this is by way of talking about and introducing the subject. That it's an enormous subject, the subject of figure painting. I want to show you a few pictures just to emphasize that. Now, different people will have different interpretations of what is meant by figure painting. One could be a sort of anatomical and measured way. This is a book, Anatomy for the Artist, and in terms of drawing, these are very precise anatomical drawings that I'm just highlighting a few to you here. They're very much about the structure of the body and also about the various measurements that are in a body generally. Well, that's one approach to dealing with figures. Another one is where the figure is very much the focus. And again, this is a very precise form of painting. These are paintings by the artist Ong, and beautiful they are, but enormously precise and clever figure paintings. I mean, that's an approach that a lot of people might be interested in dealing with. This one here is using figures in a narrative form. I've just lost the two little flags that have fallen out, so let's just pick up on some of these. Paula Rego, a Portuguese artist who lives and works in London, she uses figures in pretty much all of her work, whether they are the subject, the sole subject of the painting, or whether they are many figures in the painting. Her work is very narrative. The figures are very much telling a story, something that I've always been particularly interested in. Or maybe you might want to sort of distort your figures, as in a Francis Bacon style here, where you are using figures in a very dramatic, expressionist way. A lot of people would think of figure drawing and painting, let's move that out of the way, as a sort of illustrative, in an illustrative way. I think I mentioned a week or two ago that I do quite a lot of write and illustrate and books for my grandchildren. Well, here is one of the illustrations for a previous book, where you're using figures, but they are in an illustrative way. And then, of course, there is this picture that Bill and Lois put out, which I did last year as one of the online sessions, where figures are part of the scene. And in fact, this was partially about how you put figures into a scene, and how figures in a scene will add life to the scene in terms of scale and movement and so forth. We're not going to be doing a rerun of this one at all here. And in fact, I'm not going to focus on any one of these genres that I've been putting before you over the last couple of minutes. My aim today, and I've worked this session out with this specifically in mind, is to try and impart some confidence, giving you self-confidence when drawing and painting figures. Maybe at the end of it, if you're that little bit less worried about figures and how you might use them, then that will have been a very good thing as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to just do one more thing before we get going with the meat of what we're doing this afternoon. And I thought it might be interesting if I were to, last week's session was about sketchbooks, and this is not about sketchbooks, but I have a sketchbook here, which was from a trip just before this whole COVID lockdown, where I went to Vietnam and Cambodia. And I'd like to show you a few pictures from this, focusing in where I've been using figures. And I am interested in figures a lot when I do draw. So this one here, if I spin that around like so, the ubiquitous people on their bicycles and putt-putts and so forth. And as I go through these, and indeed as we go through into our own work in a moment, I mentioned that I'd be trying to give you some handy hints. Well, I will do that as we work along. You know, for instance, here, the figures that are used here are related to primarily the bicycles or the luggage that they're carrying, but also to their background. And I think I can show some other examples of that here. In this one, which we will be doing something based on a photograph that I've put out on this one in a moment, the figure is related to the cart that is being pulled by the figure, but also there is some significance in the marks that have been made behind the figure. Here's a lady working on some lacquer designs, and what is around this seated figure at a desk, the objects and these little lines are all part and parcel of making the figure work in your drawing. This is these wonderful telegraph poles and wires everywhere in Vietnam. They're just extraordinary. And this picture is about this pole with all the wires, but the figure here, is something to do with helping the scale of the thing and just adding that little bit of extra drama into the sketch. Oh, here's what I'm not going to be dealing with portraits here very much, but this is a ferryman. He took us out to a boat, and whilst we were sitting there and he was driving the boat, I did this sketch of him. That's actually got nothing else but him here. And these very quick little sketches of dancing ladies, just as they were dancing around, trying to catch some sort of sense of movement. This picture, the figure, it's very, and everything about the figures, it's very much part of the whole. The picture, the impact of the picture is these amazing colors of the shops here, but the figure, to my mind, just works in very much with what you've got in the background. I've sort of made much of the background there, whereas in lots of others I haven't done so. And a lot of these drawings are done really very quickly. Indoor market, a lady sitting over her bowls and drawing. I had her husband or someone come up and got a bit annoyed with me for drawing her, and so I on a separate bit of paper I did another quick drawing of her and gave it to him and as a present, and that seemed to get me out of that sticky moment. This is one of our guides, another little drawing of him. And a lot of the drawings on this trip were done in a minibus when I was moving from one place to another. And this fella went, yeah, that's the right way around. He went past us. I don't know if you can see him. I mean, they carried all sorts of things on their motorbikes, but that was the only one I saw where he was carrying a bird on his hand. And this picture, which we will be revisiting, this is the final one in a moment, a lady on a boat cutting up and selling fruit. We'll be coming back to this, in fact, as our last painting today. So just a quick run through there to start the process of explaining little things about using figures in paintings as we progress. Now, I've got my notes here. A couple of things on materials. I'm using a half sheet of Bockingford watercolor paper. I very rarely use Bockingford. I went into an art shop the other day and bought a sheet, and I tore it in half, and I thought this would, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do several drawings on here, and if I run out, I'll bring out another sheet. This is Bockingford 300 gram. It's hot pressed, this one, so it's the smoother version of them. I don't usually use that. But if you want to work in a similar way, or you want to work on separate bits of paper, or you want to work in a sketchbook, that's absolutely fine to you. Whether I'll get everything on this or not, I don't know. But if I don't, I'll go to another sheet of paper. The materials I'm using will be a soft pencil. I tend to use 4B, that sort of thing. I'm using a couple of different pens here. This is a 0.8, but any pen really. I like them slightly bigger, broader nib than the finer ones. This is permanent, and this is a 0.6. But the point about this one, it's soluble. If you put water on that one, it will spread out the ink, which is something you may have seen me do before, and we will be using that a little bit as we progress. And we'll be using some watercolor paints. This set of paints Lois has sent out to you, but I will talk about any colors that I use here. These are all good quality artist quality paints here, and I've got these three brushes, which one's a small mop brush, one's a rigger, and the other one's an old pointed thing here. I will probably use these as we go through our work, and I'll explain and reference them whenever I do so.
Mike, I've got two questions for you.
Yes.
What is the brand of the soluble pen, and what is the size of the paper?
The paper is, it was a sheet of 30 inches by 22, which I've cut in half. So that makes it 30 inches by 11, I think. That's right. No, it doesn't. It makes it 22 inches by 15. Yeah. So that's the size of the paper I'm using. And this is called Artline 210. I've got a number of others. I was actually given a few of these. The point is that they are soluble. I mean, you could do this with the fountain pen just as easily, and draw with the fountain pen, and anything that is soluble that will spread, as opposed to this, which is permanent, will be very useful. Okay, and what was the other question, Lewis?
That was it. Those were the two.
Okay, all right. And lastly, hopefully you have got all these pictures, and we're going to try and paint all of these today, but we'll see how we get on. But if you haven't got them, I will try and keep one nearby so you'll see what we're working from. I'll show them to you in the order that I'm going to use them. There's this single figure here, another single figure here. Talk about these when we come to them. There's another single figure here. This one's seated. And this is the lady you saw in that sketchbook I've just shown you here. She's pulling along a cart behind her. This picture is a group of two women washing in the Atlas Mountains. And in fact, it's part of a larger photograph here, three women washing, but I've just selected these two for the purposes of this. And then the last picture, which I showed you also in my sketchbook, is this lady cutting up pineapples and selling them on top of a boat. And I'm hoping that we will leave enough time for us to spend a bit more time on this painting than the others, but we'll see how we get on. There's a lot to do. Yeah, sounds very exciting. So let's pick up this man. This is in Morocco. He's a Berber, this man. When you put your literature out, Lois, you describe this man as a woman.
Sorry.
Okay, it's in fact a man, a very charming man. He took us up the mountains and so forth. But the reason I've chosen him, if I could explain this, is because we've got a upright standing figure here, a single figure. And whereas later we're going to have bent figures and figures with other things going around them, I thought we'd start with this man here. And one of the pictures I showed you in that Anatomy for an Artist book talks about the number of heads that go into the body and so forth. Well, I really don't want you to get over worried about that. In fact, his head goes in about 7 times. He's a big, tall fella, this guy, but for what it's worth. But I chose him also because he's got this garb all over. It probably makes it a little bit easier to draw him as the first one. Point about him, notice that he's not actually totally upright. He's leaning. Can you see he's leaning that way? He's throwing his weight onto his left shoulder and down through his arm here and leaning on this shelf. His body is at an angle, and his other arm is not taking any weight there, and it's loosely folded back onto his hips. And indeed, even this leg here isn't taking any weight. So let's see if I can just go with this. The first one I'm going to do is going to be with pencil, and I'm just going to use one color. Anyway, where do I start? If I start up here. So in terms of looking at a stick figure, we're looking at something like that. Something like that. The point is, just a stick figure, if you want, is that. That's quite a useful thing. I often, if I don't draw a stick figure, I think of figures as being stick figures. So let's just make a drawing here. When you're drawing the heads, try and make those smaller than you think you need to do. And also, this is a sort of egg shape. It's not necessarily a round shape, but it's covered up in a scarf anyway. So let's just make him a bit bigger here. And we've got remember he's leaning down on that. His angle of his body's like that. So he's got that's the loose arm, if you like. He's got. I'm not going to go counting how many heads go into here. I'll just do it roughly. It's something like he's got a big pair of boots on or something of that nature, and this foot. Okay, and then he's got some garb on around him here. Right, what else might be useful to put in if you're drawing a figure like that? Well, for me, I think it's quite useful to make some sort of comment about what he's leaning on. And we could also, it's quite nice to see that this window here is upright. Well, it's meant to be. The camera, when the lens always distorts it, but it's an upright window doing something like that. And there's another upright here, and that's all. Those are quite interesting lines to to put in, because they're helping to tell the story of how he is leaning like this. Now, what I'm going to do is just put some paint on this and give you time to go ahead and do your own if you haven't already begun. And then we'll see as we go along. Maybe we'll get a little bit quicker at this, and you can be working along with me. But I'll assume you haven't been working with me for this one. And let's just put in a few colors. So I'm going to do a monochromatic drawing of this. So bring up my paints, and I'll just use I'm doing okay. So I'm going to use this is neutral tint, this color here. You can use any color you like. It could be brown, a dark color if possible. So I'm going to put in some of the lightish colors here. Leave out any paper that I think might be quite useful to just keep it white. Just put in something here, and so I'm deliberately putting in the lightest colors. Let's just put something in here, and now I'm going to use some hairdryer just to speed things up a little bit. All I did there is I put in some light colors, and I'm going to just dry this a little bit, but I don't want it to be completely dry. So let's just do that. And now picking up the same color, but making it stronger. Let's bring in some darker bits. Too strong. Let's bring in some dark down this side of his body, his clothing. I'm going to soften that off a little bit just by rubbing it in there and make that a bit darker. So I've just been using this neutral tint. I've been using my moppy brush for this, and the paper's still a little bit wet. Let's give him a shadow, and I'll make this little bit darker here, and this bit, and this bit. A bit of dark here just helps the light of his that side of his clothing to stand out a bit more. Right, that's my little drawing of that figure. Just using one color, making a drawing in pencil, popping in some light color, and then pretty soon after that going in with dark color. We're going to be using more colors in a moment, but just in terms of making a study of that figure, remember this business of the angle that he's at, very slight angle, the weight that's coming down on this side of his body. That's really important, just to get that, and I'm connecting it with that line. That's probably the most important background line to have. And then I brought in some darker colors where I think they might be useful, including that in the shadow and anything else I want in the background. I mean, that's as much as this little drawing is going to take us. Now, this is a photograph I took of a man at some distance away from me. I just spotted him in Dominica some years ago. he's I thought he'd be a good subject for this, because we're introducing a couple of aspects with the figure here. He's carrying something, he's also holding a dog, and the shadows are really interesting in this one. So let's talk about this figure a little bit. I think what I'll do with all of these, I'll talk and just home you in on things to be aware of. This is very much a standing upright figure. You can measure how many times his head goes in there, but again, he looks like a big fella. It's going to be something like 7 or something. My eye level is, I'm looking up at him a little bit because he's a long distance away. I'm seeing his shoulders as being fairly symmetrical, and I think that's because he's carrying probably quite a weight here. Although he's not carrying the dog, he's aware, or he is carrying something as well on the other side. So in terms of stick figure, he's pretty much straight in front of us. So, but in terms of his shoulders, they're pretty even, aren't they? There, and in fact, they do something like that. And but he is throwing his weight forward. Because he's walking, he's throwing his right leg forward, so that's coming forward here a little bit, and his back leg is trailing a little bit here. So that's just something we want to be aware of. He's got a weight, he's got a dog, got a hat, and he's got very strong sunlight coming on one side. So just thinking stick figure wise, just being aware of the shoulders, the hips, where the weight is going. It's very much his right foot, his right leg is taking the weight. So let's just see if we do a little drawing, make him a bit bigger. Maybe he's got a hat on here. Now, if you want to work along with me, if you're not already doing so, that's just great. But I will, of course, as always, give time for you to catch up. So we've got a head like that. Try not to give him too much of a football shaped head, but sort of rather more oval shape. And just be aware that because we're looking up at him a bit, you're not seeing a lot of his neck. So his shoulders are going, if you follow a line through like that, you'll find that it's probably cutting through his chin. Okay, so he's got quite big shoulders here. In fact, when you carry a weight, and you see what's happening, you tend to, if you're carrying a heavy bucket, your arms tend to come in a little bit, because it's easier with your arms in than it is with your arms out. So let's just bear that in mind. It's going to be something like that. I don't know if I've probably exaggerated a bit, and so his torso, but his hips are most definitely going that direction. So we're seeing this leg. Let's just put it in here. We're seeing that leg coming forward like that, and then this one, the hip goes that way. You see the bottom of his trousers actually is below the other one, and then just come this way and he's something like that. Let's just see, he's got an arm down here. I think I made his shoulders a bit too big there, making him something like that. And then he's got a bucket down here. And so we're just aware that his shoulders are probably like that, straight across at the top. his hips are more like that, and he's on some sort of a surface there. Let's put a dog in, shall we? Let's get our dog in here. And what sort of dog is that? Looks fairly fierce dog to me. And I think I'll make that dog a bit. Where's the dog come up? Comes up a bit higher on his, up here maybe. No, we'll pop the dog in, shall we? Okay, so let's paint this guy. I'm going to let's just have a look at his. I'm just going to redraw this leg a bit. These two legs, they're coming out of these trousers. Quite thin, his legs really, and something like that. Okay, so how do I paint this guy? I'll put some, but this is burnt sienna. I'll just put something down for, in fact, I won't, I'll use raw sienna. I'll use burnt sienna. So let's just make that a bit more like that. And his arms, like that, legs. So we got just popped in something to do with the skin that we see showing. I'll pick up a color for his t-shirt, which is a sort of cerulean blue, or a mixture of cerulean blue, and it's just, if there are any bits that are, once you're going through this, that you want to leave light because you think the light's shining on them particularly, that would be just fine. Let's give him that. And then for his trousers, I'll just come up with some sort of gray color, whatever. I go a little bit of crimson, a little bit of blue, a little bit of, I'll make that a bit bluer. Yeah, something like that. There's a lot of light. Let's just pop that in here. And I'll use some of that for the bucket. Let's go back to the brown and put something in for the dog as well. Here. So that was just burnt sienna. And right. Touch in here something to do with the ground, and what I'll do around him is I'll just put a blue in something. Well, I'll put an ultramarine blue. Say that's a nice warm blue because it's a really warm picture, and I'm going to put some of that around here, and that will help the white of his hat to stand out. I'm using my mop brush, any brush that works for you. Let's try and take that down. I'm not fussed about the hill, the sea, or anything of that nature. I'm just putting in a color that in some way tells us a little bit more. let's make that a bit stronger up here. Whilst it's all wet, this booking forward paper is quite interesting, but it's a water-based, fiber-based paper, so it's taking the watercolor quite well. And now what I'll do is I'll bring in some darker colors just to suggest the shadows a bit more. So if I mix up a shadow color, say ultramarine blue, a bit of burnt sienna. What's that looking like? Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, make it slightly more blue, and let's just pop in some shadows here, which might, they're pretty strong shadows, these ones. So we're just seeing that comes around, pretty much covers his arms. Some suggestion of the various folds in his t-shirt. And this side here. That contrast with the shadow where the hat is quite a good one for giving you a real feeling of the strength of the sunshine here. And it was a very hot day, I remember. So let's just take that in here. His dogs, mostly dark. Let's put that there. So I've added quite a lot of shadow in here. Let's take some of that shadow off. Running off this way. And if I wanted to add a little bit more there, do I want to add a little bit more? What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my neutral tint and maybe just drop a bit there whilst it's wet. A little bit there, maybe. Let that work its way in. Just a little bit of emphasis and maybe one-ish. There, so that's a man walking towards you. Bright sunlight coming down on one side. We're very much using our shadows to exaggerate, to make the most of pop in a bit here. Yeah, to make the most of the lights and darks in this. And it's quite a dramatic picture, but it's these two that we've done here are full frontal single figures. One's static, one's moving, and one's leaning up against something, one's carrying something and moving towards you. But it's just being aware of where the tilt and the weights are in a figure that will make all the difference to giving a little bit of life. Just being aware that Muhammad here is leaning and using that as a support helps us to give the figure some life and relating it to its background. And here just throwing that, the weight coming forward, the angle of the hip here and then that bringing that leg in behind what's going on with this foot, that movement, if you like, will help to give the figure some life. You know, if you hadn't appreciated that his hip is twisted, that the weight's on this foot, it's coming forward, and so forth. You might have a more wooden looking figure than you would do otherwise. So I'm wishing you all good luck with that, everybody. Shift this paper around a bit so that we can move across. Let's do something. Where are we going? Let's do something over. I'm going to do something over this top left-hand bit, I think, and then I can do something in here. I may even get them all on one sheet. We'll see. I don't know. This is going to be our next one, everybody. We're going back now to Morocco. This is in the Atlas Mountains. I have no idea who this guy was. He obviously saw me taking a photograph, but I've chosen him because he's seated. We've had two standing figures. Let's have a seated figure. Let's put your man over there for a moment. Right, I'm going to draw with a permanent pen on this one, I think, just to ring the changes. As I always do when I draw with these pens, I don't do any pencil drawing beforehand. I just go in and draw and accept that whatever marks come out. If they're not the right marks, then I'll search and find the best I can do, right mark wise. Okay, so he's there. Now, let's have a think about this. And this, I think maybe you're getting the message here that when you're drawing figures, often there are subtleties which you might, if you have the time, you might be able to work out before you even start your drawing. In fact, you are drawing just by looking, but you haven't actually yet made the marks yet. Okay, so we're looking, we're drawing, but we haven't made our marks yet. Of course, given that he is seated, again, I think I'm photographing him from a distance and also slightly looking up to him here. But I think he's very square to us. So there's a line sort of running down here and going across. It's pretty much like that. He's very square to us. Maybe we're looking at him slightly to his right, slightly this here, because we can see this leg, knee coming out. But the important thing is just to sort of think about where his bum might be, and because his knees are up above it. He also is garbed up, and I thought it was really hot in the Atlas Mountains, but Mohammed and he were fully dressed as I might be for winter. It wasn't anywhere near as hot as they're used to it. So we'll have a look at drawing this one. I'm using a permanent pen. He's looking down. His head's a sort of egg shape like that, and he's looking down. So if you think about it, his eyes are well down. It's sort of like that. I've exaggerated that a bit. Can you see that this area at the top of his head is bigger than the area sort of underneath his eyes? Again, his shoulders, difficult to know exactly where they are because he's got so much clothing here, but I've exaggerated it a little bit, I would suspect. The back, a line through. I always find this a very useful line, the line that runs, if you imagine one shoulder and an imaginary line going around the back of someone's neck and then coming up to the other shoulder. I always find that really, quite useful in helping me to gauge where it is. But it's you can see with him that it's virtually sort of touching his nose, isn't it? Right. So he's got he's quite square to us. And his arms come down. He's got one hand over the other. So let's just see if we can come up with a rough idea. We've got his hands here. That might be quite useful to know his hands there. His this look at his left knee. It sort of comes. I don't know if I made him a bit too big. Let's just have a look. His knee comes up about level with his hands here. And I talked about where his bum is. Well, that sort of disappears into the background a little bit, and into all the folds of his clothing. And then we've got another knee here coming in a little bit. The folds of the clothing. Let's just see where we're going here. We don't want to make this area too big, but it's not going to be as big as that. So he's going to go down to something like that. Let's just see if I've got a pair of boots here. Have I made his legs long enough? I think when you're drawing, you're always asking. I've got a feeling his body's a bit bigger than. Let's make his legs a bit bigger, because I've got a feeling his body's too big for the legs as I've drawn them. Got his robe that hangs. Bring his legs down here a bit more, and something like that. And this leg is coming in at an angle. His boots here. The back of the wall, he's seated on a stool of some kind, and the back of the wall sort of runs along there. Now that's quite important, because one of the reasons why I've chosen this picture, actually I should have drawn him over a bit more, but is because the relationship he has with this wall is very much through the shadow that is thrown by him onto the wall. So we don't need to draw that. We'll put that in a moment. Let's just see if we've got, does he look hunched up enough? He looks a bit too upright to me. What can we do about that? Let's just bring his head down a bit. Yeah, a bit more. Okay, so although I'm using a permanent pen, and bring his eyes down, I'm happy just to keep. I use this word searching. I'm searching all the time for. Right, let's see where we go with that. That's a drawing. Okay, we're going to do something with some paints now, very much along the lines of the one that I did before. Here, let's just start off with some burnt sienna. We don't see much of his body here, do we? We've got hands, head, like that. Yeah, he's covered up, he's robed up completely. And I'll use some cobalt blue. So I'm using my moppy brush, this small squirrel moppy brush that Lois has mentioned in her blurb. And then I'll put some of blue in for his clothing, and if there's anything that any bits I want to leave white, I will show. I don't think I want to leave, but I'm going to put some dark in to make this work a little bit better. So there we are. He's got his robe comes down here. He looks a little more statuesque, I think, than he is, but never mind. I think I love this expression, hope for the best. I think a lot of painting is about that. So let's give him some green pants. In fact, I'll make them a bit more olive green. I'll add a little bit of neutral tint to it. Maybe that should make them a little more. Oops, much. That's a bit much. That's okay. All right, and any more blue? I think there's some blue down here. I'll use. And okay, a bit of ultramarine blue and a little bit of neutral tint. Let's just put his boots in here. Just make some sort of a comment about his boots, and something about this wonderful warm wall behind him as a sort of Moroccan almost. I'm just fiddling with my screen. There we go. I can see, so that I know you can see my paints. Very dangerous. I put my drinking glass next to my water pot, so let's see if I can keep the two separate. This color behind, I will pick up some raw sienna here, and yeah, I'm going to add something like the more orangey red, bit more red, and put some of that in around the guy. I'll make that a bit redder, I think. Right, and I know I'll go straight in with some darker colors to try and suggest some of the shadows, although I'd like this to dry a little bit. In fact, I will dry it, give it a blast with a hairdryer. Right, so I'm going to get a shadow color underway, and I'll use ultramarine blue and burnt sienna again, a little bit of that. So I don't want it to be too brown, so I don't use too much burnt sienna. I like, if anything, to be bluer, and I also want to be conscious of how strong it is. A bit bluer than that. There we go, just try that. So let's put in some shadows to this guy. A lot of him is lost in shadow. His face, various garbs he's got on here, all these sort of folds he's got in his clothing. We'll pop those in like that. So however you've drawn his clothing, you just give him the folds you think he needs in his clothing. And then I'll use that shadow to suggest that he's not completely against the wall, but there's enough there to suggest his shape, really, because he is quite close to the wall. Let's just put that shadow in. And that runs a seated figure. A lot of all the pen ink marks just get kind of lost in all of that. And if I, again, as I did before, if I want to, let's just see if we give them a, if I want to just finish that off with a bit of detail, I'm just going to dry this. I'll take my shadow color here. I'll make it stronger, a bit more ultramarine blue, a bit more burnt sienna. That's probably enough. I don't think I need to add any black to that. Let's just and see whether I might want to add one or two little accents here just to suggest the very darkest bits. There we go. Okay, a seated figure against a wall, slightly looking down. Making use of very little additional bits of information, the wall, where it comes at the bottom here. The shadow, of course, that's thrown by him onto the wall. Again, he's a little bit like this chap, a very strong light here, not so much in this first one, but these two, very strong light. Okay, two standing figures, one seated figure. I'll let you move on with that. We're going to go to Vietnam for our next painting. There's some very subtle things here. If you're waiting, just have a look at that picture, which I'll bring out to you. All to do with trying to give your figures some feeling of life, and as I said before, that it is often the subtle things which you, by looking, you stand a good chance of seeing.
I've got a quick question for you. Someone's asking, if you're drawing with permanent pen, do you ever draw folds and close with the pen rather than paint?
Yeah, can do. Yes. Let's do some of that. Why not? Yeah. Of course, if the paint is still wet, the pen won't work. And but I switched to my rigger there, made the paint much stronger and popped it in, because I could do it much more quickly than with my pen, and vary the thickness and the lines of the marks much better.
Someone's also asked, yeah, do you pay much attention to feet?
Yes, that I read into the fact that they think Mike Willdridge can't draw feet. Well, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Feet and hands are very difficult. But in my defense, you look at Rembrandt's paintings and just look at how many of his paintings the people have their hands in their clothing, in a sort of a woolen muff of some kind or something like that, or hidden underneath something. I reckon Rembrandt couldn't draw hands very well, you know. Does that make it sound not so bad?
Lots of readies.
Yeah, I do find feet and particularly in hands quite difficult. And this this one I showed you earlier, this illustration for one of these stories I do. I was just wondering, I think these hands are awful. But because, well, they're telling enough of the story of what's going on there, I think.
Mike,
yeah,
I wasn't being insulting to you. I wasn't being insulting to you. I was just meaning that I find it difficult to draw feet. So is it okay just to do impressions?
Yes, it is. Yes, is that Sandra, is it?
No, Susie.
Oh, Susie, join the club. I'm with you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't insulting you.
The more you can make a couple of marks which sort of are good enough, and no one's going to question you too much, the better. But the feet, and I've done a lot of life drawing as well. I've always found drawing feet, the feet and elbows and hands with drawing the human figure, I've always found very difficult.
Yeah.
But you know, we all have these things. I don't think I've ever drawn a decent horse in my life. I find the anatomy of the horse really difficult to get my head around. So there we are. Anyway,
thank you.
I hope you appreciate the Rembrandt story. Right, I'm going to move on now and deal with this lady in Hanoi, and a trip we made there a couple of years ago. We came back from this to arrive virtually in the lockdown in the UK, which was unfortunate. And I'm going to use a soluble pen for this one. I'm going to try and make this one of my quickest drawings if I can, so we can move on. So I'm using a soluble pen, but I want to talk about this figure. And the drawing that I'm going to do here, oh, let me just show you again. Where's it gone? Just a reminder that when I was in Hanoi, this is what I did. I would have taken photographs. I remember drawing her, and then moving up the street and photographing her. So yeah, it's something like that. But I'm working from real life on this one. So that's what I did on there. And the things I want to point out here are the subtleties. She's pulling this quite a slight lady here, and pulling this whacking great big trolley here. It's got big wheels and everything, but there's still all sorts of stuff on top of it. And what she's doing to pull it is something you want to be aware of when you're drawing her figure. Now she's ever so slightly leaning forward. She's got her legs well stretched out. She's using some force to pull this along the road, and that is making her body lean forward. So when we're making our drawing, just be careful you don't make her too upright, because that might not tell the story of the hard work that's going into pulling this. So let's have a go with this one. I'm going to draw with this soluble pen, and then I'm going to just touch some water into it, and then hopefully that will make the whole drawing work. So I'll start off with her hat. I'm able to see under her head. Let's do it up here, shall we? I'm able to see under her. There's a hat here. Do I want to do that? Yeah, I'll do that. There's a hat here, and I'm very slightly able to see under her hat, so we can see just a little bit of her head. Don't make her head too big. Let's make that hat a little bit bigger. And now I will use a pencil here just to point out with my pencil here, just to point out that we're looking at she's throwing her weight backwards quite hard that way, and then she's sort of coming that way. But it's that line that I don't want to lose in getting this drawing to work. So let's just put her elbow back like that. Her body is, her head's actually in front of her body a little bit, so just ever so slightly, and let's make her a bit more like so, and hat's a bit big for her now, isn't it? I'll go back to the other size, and her leg is, just bear in mind this pencil line I did, and it's like that, and she's stretching forward with her other leg like that. The road is going at an angle. Where are we? It's let's just put that. The road's going at, the pavement sort of going like that, ever so slightly. So, and now one of the reasons why you made me self-conscious about my feet now, Susie. You have, so we've got her pulling. This is not quite working here. All right, okay, she's pulling. Right, she's pulling this cart now. Remember, we're going back at that angle here, so the cart is going to be something like something like that. Trying to get, and then she's got and this thing is sort of going like that, pulling that, and we just make a cart with some stuff on it, melons, coconuts. I think there are a lot of coconuts on here. It doesn't really matter what you put on the cart. Let's just get that. This is not a bright sunny day, is it? We don't have the strength of shadows, but there are shadows here. So let's see what we can do with that. And the hat does look big, but maybe that's all right. So I'm going to put in one or two other bits here, just to suggest that we are walking along the street. It doesn't need to be much. Now, the soluble pen is great because it provides its own palette, if you like. But let's so if I use it a little bit like this, what light there is coming mostly from that direction, so I can be aware of where I think a lot of this leg is going to be. It's dark clothing she's wearing anyway. We've just got a little bit going on here. Right, I'm going to take liberties with this. So in order to get her to show up a little bit, her hat, I'm going to suggest that that's going to be a bit darker there. And let's put in some. This is all going to provide me with my ink, my color in a moment. So I'm just aware that what I'm putting in here might be helpful. You'll see what I mean in just a moment if you haven't done something like this before. So right. Grab a brush. brush will do. This is just a round brush, and let's put in some, that makes the hat stand out a bit. And this is an excellent way of just making very very quick paintings here. And, if you're working in a sketchbook or something and you just want to get something of the scene very quickly down, then having made your drawing, you can touch this in. Let's just see, let's put another one under here. It's a bit long. That'll do. Add a few things to her card to make it look a bit heavier. There we are. Lady walking along a street, pulling a cart, trying to relate the cart to the figure, being aware of the fact she's leaning into her task here, and that then makes this function a little better within the whole drawing. Using the background or anything you like just to help to accentuate her. I just want to accentuate that hat she's wearing. And I think I made a bit of I've lost some of the light that's going on this part of her body here. I don't know if I can reclaim that, but I mean, that's the way it goes. Okay, but the important thing is just being aware of the movement of the figure. Now, I'll show you the one I did as well in Vietnam, so that you can just try and make that. Put that there, shall I? Put some more. Okay, just trying to give some life to the figures. So often I think people are worried about drawing and painting figures because they look back and they think, oh, that figure looks a bit wooden, a bit like a sort of wooden toy. And what I'm saying is that use your eyes, look, and try and see the subtleties that go on in the body. I'm not going to spend any time talking about the anatomy of the body and the proportions and everything like that. But if you can see, as with these initial pin figures that I drew, you can imagine this as pin figure. In fact, I just drew a line there because that was quite useful for me to force me to think of getting that figure to move forwards. Okay, everyone. I'll leave this lot here whilst you're working on that. Shall I do that? You can see all this. Yeah. Okay. And over to you, and good luck. Goodbye, Vietnam. We're coming back to Morocco for this one. Remember, this was from a photograph I took. It was in the Atlas Mountains, looking down at the stream. These ladies were washing in the river. And it's these two figures that I'm particularly interested in. I'd like to use some color with these, but let's just work here. Now, talking about drawing before you, I'll use a pen for this as well, for this one. let's have a look at what we've got here. The reason why I'd like to get this one done, maybe even more so than this one. This one is kind of about putting a figure into a painting, but this one here is relating the two figures to each other and using certain aspects of the human body just to help you do that. So we've got this lady on the left here. She is they're bending over the washing. Look at where her head is in relation to the rest of her body. So if I draw a line, if I put my pencil where her head is there, I'll move the pencil out of the way in a moment, but you can see it's almost in line with the top of her back. And I'll draw that in a moment, and you'll see. But that's useful to know, because we've got to get a figure that's bending over, but she's not bending over as much as this one. This one's really bending over a lot. And look at where her head is in relationship to her back. See how much there is going up there. And then also be aware of where the head is in relation to the whole body. Okay, so let me draw that and see if I can get this one out. So we've got, I often start off drawing heads. Not everyone does. Picasso used to start at the elbow or anywhere. Lovely paintings of him just making a mark on a page and drawing off, and I find that very difficult. So I'm looking at this lady's head here. So she's got a shawl on of some kind, headdress, isn't it? So her head is something like that. She's looking down, isn't she? If you imagine, she's actually looking down very much there. But the important thing with her is that if I draw a pencil line there, is that her back doesn't go much above that. Maybe just a smidge, okay. And then we try and get some idea of, she's got a shoulder, her arms come back, and get an idea of how much projected away from her body. She's got an arm down here, and then something like that. And she's something like that, bent down. So that's probably the most important thing, just to be aware of where her head is in relationship to her, relation to her back. Okay, and then there's we've got some plots there. A lot of this is lost in very dark shadow, isn't it? So, okay, now to work this figure in and work it in so it's in relationship to this one, just be aware of a number of things. Where her head is in relationship to this figure, to the other figure here. So it's sort of somewhere down at that level. There's a line going through there, an imaginary line. And looking at the space between the two, what we call the negative space, her head's going to be something. She's really quite stretching, isn't she? Probably a younger woman, I would have thought. Her head's down like that. And where's her back going to be? Well, if I draw a straight line there, imaginary line, it's going to be up here somewhere. Wow. Gosh, is she really bending over that much? So let's just see. Her arms, there's not a lot of room. We'll go her legs. So she's bending over something like that. Sometimes it's difficult to even imagine, believe it. So there we are. She's, and then these legs here, where do they come in relationship to her body? Well, they come down here somewhere, this leg and this one. So in terms of sort of the figures and just being this scene of these ladies washing here. She's probably a bit closer than I've drawn her, actually, I think. Yeah, definitely a bit closer. I've drawn it too far away. And then we've got a few plots. We don't need to worry. The point about this photograph was the understanding how important the position of the head is. I'm going to race through this one now so I can give myself some time for the other one. And let's just put some colors in. Let's give her a yellow dress of some kind, and give this one a blue dress. Leave out patches for where the lights might be. I think I'll take some light off that. Okay, so I'm going to do this one really quickly. I'm much more quickly than I intended. Let's just put a couple of circles there for the washing bowls, and because the main message here is the figures and the position of the head. So let's put this. You can see she's not leaning over as much as the other lady is. This one is leaning over much more, and pop in some flesh color. Yeah, I've lost her. I'm going to try that. Put shadow in just to finish it off. So if you were out drawing a scene like this and you wanted to make a paint, you wouldn't have much time really to get it done. So I'm getting a shadow color, ultramarine blue, a bit of burnt sienna. Let's just see if we can. A lot of her is in shadow. I'll make that a bit bluer. Okay, I'm deliberately racing through this one now, because I think the message that I want to get across has been got across, and I want to get the last painting done. So let's put some shadow coming from these ladies into their washing. Haven't got time to do any more than that. All right, so there we are. Yeah, just a little scene of two ladies doing their washing. Rush through it more than I've intended to. I was going to spend a little bit more time on that, but I just want to at least get cracking with this last one. So this scene, two women, the big message here is the position of the head. The head is so critical. If you think about everything we've done so far, very much the head was sort of lined up here. And here, looking down here, but in doing this head here, I was trying to point out that the head is almost in front of the body here. Its position is, if you think about it, if I draw it, just put a line straight down from her head, see where it comes on her body. Everything is pushed backwards, and then similarly these two ladies here, where their heads are, to get that feeling of something going on, they're concentrating what they're doing, just be aware of their heads and see it before you actually start drawing. Okay, I'll let you all work on that one, everybody. We're coming up for 2 hours, Lois.
Good. Yeah.
I would like to do this one.
Okay, well, go for it.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time people have, but they can always watch the video afterwards. If they...
Yeah, I will do that. Okay. I'll do that on a separate sheet in a moment, but I want people to have time for this. You know, it's an odd thing sometimes when you really sort of rush at things. You're making decisions about priorities. You're prioritizing things, and actually, I think that's the best drawing of all of them. Yeah, and yet I had to rush that. So there's a lesson there, isn't there?
Yes, exactly.
But you hope for the best. That's the expression, isn't it? Do it and hope for the best. Right. I'll keep an eye on, let's leave that there. I'll keep an eye on the readies. So Sue has said, thank you very much. Need to go now. Learned a lot and nice to work in a crowd instead of alone. Is that Sue Wright?
Yeah.
No, she's not new. She's not new, is she?
I don't think so.
No, I recognise the name Sue. Okay. Right, let me dry this and we'll move on in a moment. Oh, incidentally, let's just do this one whilst I think about it. I talked about the light shining on the back of these ladies here and so forth. And remember, quite often I've done it here, particularly, and here a little bit, but you can emphasize that a little bit by putting something against it, because it puts something dark against the light, makes that light appear lighter. So let me just say, I'll pick up some turquoise color here. Just mix it in a little bit here, and then.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to add some blue to that. Yeah, and just by doing that, you emphasize the light that's on her back there. Right, let's make that very wet, so I'm going to move that out of the way. Right, find another bit of paper. This is Bocky Ford again, and this is going to take us, I think, Lois, to the 2.5 hour mark. Are you happy with that, Lois?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yes, I am happy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll do that. Okay. So I'm. It was quite a lot, but I just wanted to get as many figures done in this as possible. Here we are. This is the lady. This is on the Mekong Delta, and it's what was it called now? Let me get myself. It's a floating market, I think, and I was told by people that it used to be a lot bigger than this, but it was just superb. And we went on board here, which is why I got out to take this photograph and do my drawing. Yeah, this is it. Floating market, it's called. Yeah, That's right. So that was the drawing I did. This was a photograph I took afterwards. And let's see if we can work this one as quickly as possible. I'm going to use pencil. I think what I want to do here is a little bit of what I showed you earlier in this picture, is putting figures into a scene of some kind. Well, I'm only putting one figure in because I think it just makes it quicker. And if I cut this little bit of paper out earlier, if we put that over her there and take her out, if you can imagine, it's a really interesting top of the boat here. I could imagine myself sort of happily drawing that little bit there, but how much more interesting does it become when you put a figure in? All right, so I'm going to deal with this as I'm going to deal with this in much the same way as I've done with lots of my other paintings, where we do it in 4 stages. So I'm just going to, but I'll run through these as quickly as possible. Try and work with me if you can. I'm going to start with the drawing here. Now, I'm going to leave out as much as I can in the drawing. In fact, leave out as much as I can in the painting as well. But I'm not going to have this foreground, but I do want some foreground. I want something in front of this lady. So let's put her off to one side. Don't make this too big so that it doesn't take us too long. And I think I'll actually start with her. So let's just put her in here. She's looking down, and you can only see a little bit of her head like that. Okay, you can hardly see. She's got a interesting little wrap to hold it on, and then her shoulders. Again, I talked about this imagining her shoulders, because she's bent over a little bit. Her shoulders are like that; they go behind her head. So she's much more slight than that big bloke was holding his dog, and so she's got and she's doing something. She's cutting a pineapple with her hands like that. So we've got some sort of scene, and then she's sitting squat. Okay, right. Let's relate her to what's going on around her. This is this sort of bimini canopy top here to keep out the rain and the sun, no doubt. Let's put some top over it here. We're looking. It's slightly twisted one way, so we're not seeing anything particularly on this side, but on this side we've got we've got some windows running down here. What are there? Gaps of some kind, and there's a shadow, which let's put a which is the light underneath some sort of tarpaulin. So we've got a couple of little things on top of here. Interesting plants here. So let's put something in of this plant. I reckon she sits every single. It's a big touristy thing, of course. I mean, we were part of a tourist group. We got pineapples. But different boats quite often were selling just one item. She's just doing pineapples. All right, let's put something. I talked about something in front of her. So let's put her, where should we come? This sort of hatchway. It's the sort of only bit of perspective we've had to worry about today, really. And I'm going to put some kind of a, I don't know what this is, some sort of box, or maybe it's for tips in here. And then we got more pineapples here, more pineapples here. So I'm going to do this drawing, and then just run through the painting in 4 stages, but as quickly as possible. So what else do we need now? We've got the river going sort of like that, what we've seen in the background, like that. And I simply don't have time to put in all these buildings. Let's just make a few marks of what the buildings might be here. Sort of going away from us, something like that. I'll show you how maybe we'll make that work to our advantage. Just a few little things like that. And the boat, comes like so. And then she's got lots of enormous amount of cuttings of the pineapple here. A few little, it looks like a broom of some kind hanging up here. That's not a broom, but I don't know what it is. Oh, that's starboard, port and starboard, isn't it? Yeah, got it. Right, so this scene is greatly enhanced by having that figure in it. This is what made me think that this would be a good one here, just to see how it really helps to have that figure then. We want that figure to stand out. Well, there's every chance that she will, because we've got a this dark background behind her here, but that's my drawing. And so I'll just let you go ahead and make a drawing, similar drawing to that. You can see I really haven't bothered to go into verandas and awnings and trees and everything here. I don't want to, and I don't have time to do so. But I do want to establish that there's some sort of backstop there to give the whole thing perspective. There is a form of perspective in what's happening here with that angle, but she is so dominantly in the center, an important part of this painting. We'll go from there. All right, everybody. So if you'd like to get your drawing done there, when we come back, I'm going to put down some washes as quickly as I can and let those dry, and then we'll come in and put in a bit more color and then some detail, and see if we can get this painting with this single figure in it finished. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do now. I'm quite often people wet all their paper before they work. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to be quite happy to slop quite a lot of paint around. I'll continue using this mop brush here because it will do the job, but I could go for a bigger one here, but I'll just stick with what I've been using up until now. Okay, so ultramarine blue, and I'm going to put a sky in, and certainly when I've done the sky and quite a lot else here, I won't be doing any more painting. So this is a one-off sky. Let's put the sky in and take it around. This is a hot pressed paper. I'm not used to using this. It's quite interesting. It's much smoother than most papers that I often use. So I'm using ultramarine blue. I'm taking it around down to the buildings in the background. If I want to make it a bit stronger, the top maybe, let's do that. And whilst it's still wet, it'll work its way down. Do I want to bring any more in? Let's just put some in there. Okay, and I'll pop in some wash for the sea, the water, I'll use, okay, I'll use a little bit of this sap green, a little bit of green, something a little bit of green, and I'll put some cobalt with it. So, and I'm just going to leave it as if there are no other boats here at all. Let's just take this around. I do want to make sure that we get this one done pretty quickly. Let's just put that in here. If I need to come back and make that darker a little bit later, I can do so. I'll leave a few little marks as if there's some water. What's going on here? Let's just put something in there. Okay. For the buildings in the background, the wash, I'll just pick up some raw sienna, put some of that in here over my pencil marks. Okay. Right. Let's go to my cobalt. I'll just put some blue in for the boat. What we see of the structure of the boat, the top here, this sort of bimini top, some blue in there. Might as well just cover that area. It's going to be darker anyway, and I'll go back to my raw sienna, just a little bit of it, and I'll put some of that on the deck here. If nothing else, it will suggest that there's a fair amount of sunshine around because it's a fairly warm color. Drop in some colors here. Sometimes I wouldn't do this till later on, but I want to progress a little bit. Oh, let's give this lady, like I've done before, just a bit of burnt sienna there, a little bit for her skin, and I'll go for a light blue, cerulean light blue top. Okay. I'll also use a bit of this raw sienna just for her hat. Quite often when I do painting like this, I'm some of these colors I'm dropping, I do the next stage on, but I'm deliberately taking this one at some speed now, so we'll just put in a little bit of some yellow there, and that was a sort of cadmium yellow or Rillian yellow or something like that, and I'm going to use a gamboge color, just a sort of a deeper yellow, to pop in something to do with all these bananas, pineapples, not bananas. So we've got, I mean, that is very much an important part of what this is all about. Do I anything else I can do? Got some here, just make this a little bit red, and some sort of light color up here. I'm popping in some light greens here, which are the leaves for the pineapples. I've just picked up a bit of green that I've got there, and just something slightly green, just playing around with that. Right, that's taking at speed me through splatting down colors which are washes. And I'm going to let that, in fact, not just let it dry. I'll dry it quickly with my hair dryer before I come in and put some other colors down, shadows, and then any finishing marks. So she's quite dominant already. I'm quite happy with that in this setting. If I took her out, yeah, it wouldn't be so interesting without the figure. Right, so the third stage is to put some more color on and shadow, and I have put quite a lot of different colors on here. Let's just see if I need to bring any more. And I'm not going to do anything more to the sky, anything more to the horizon here or buildings. I'm not going to add any more boats and other things like that in because we've decided against it. I think I'll come up with a green of some kind, maybe maybe my sap green, or which is a sort of utility green, and just paint a little bit of color on that, just give those, and in one or two places just add some more green to the pineapples. Any other colors that I want to put in? I did a lot of this the first time. I quite like the reds. I think they're actually, the reds are, I think there are patterns on her her clothing, but I think the red's quite nice there to have put a bit of red there, starboard, and that's quite nice, and bit of orange up there. I'm just going to mess up the surface of this a little bit, and I'll do that by putting a sort of slightly browny grey on. So I'm looking for something a bit blue here. That's fine. I'll add some burnt sienna to it. That's fine. I've come up with a sort of a light brown sludgy color. Let's just put just so that we mess this up a little bit, and just make a few marks there. It's not critical, and a little bit of something orangey here. I think that works quite. I don't know what that is, a broom of some kind, something a bit orangey there. I'll make this red a little stronger there. I'm going to put some shadows in here to bring this forward. So we're close to putting, let's put in the shadows now. Okay, the shadows, I will use the same colors that I've used all the way through this, just to keep it simple. Ultramarine blue and a bit of burnt sienna. That's not to say that's the only colors you use for shadows, but I've deliberately stuck with those. So I'm going to put some shadows in now, let that dry, and then come in and put in any other little details. So let's put some, make that a bit stronger. It's not quite strong enough. I don't, if it's not strong enough, because watercolors always dry. This is going to be a bit better because they always dry lighter than you think. I'm going to put this in here, but I'm certainly going to have to come in with something darker in a moment. So I'll just put that in there. A sort of shadow. Yeah, I'll go over that with something darker, I think. Let's bring in some, the light is coming that way a little bit. So let's just put in some shadow here. And put in some shadows on these pineapples at the base of them. Put in some shadow on the lady. And her hat. And it's cast across the top of her body a little bit. Let's put some shadows in to define a little bit of her clothing. That should be enough there. Just a few little more shadows here. Underneath these pineapples. Cast by this box of some kind underneath and a little bit of shadow down that side. Right, we're nearly there. And with my rigger, using this shadows, I'm just going to make a few little marks. You can see I'm trying to accentuate a wee bit the perspective of this coming here. Okay, and I'm going to roll straight now into the next phase, which is just making one or two little details. I want this to be darker. I just want one or two little accents showing here. Just dry it a little bit. And I will roll straight into this because it's so little I'm going to do here. I'll go back to my ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, but make it very strong. In fact, I'll use a slightly larger brush. Very strong. If I want to make it darker, I'd add some neutral tint. So let's just put this in here. I'll make it stronger than that. With a little bit of neutral tint. Okay, let's this great backdrop awning which pushes her out so much. All right, and let's find one or two other little useful places to make some accents. Let's put something there, something there. Putting dark things next to light will help us just bring something a little bit under her. Under her chin. what that is, but it's worth just doing something with it. And then, although I put the shadow in here, I'm just going to bring in a few little much darker marks just to, and they're very much lost and found marks. They're just marks made to, and maybe just the odd little accent here, just to suggest. Put something here as if it's silhouetted. I don't know what it is, but it just shows up. It shows up what's light in front of it. Okay. Stand back. I think I've hit my time up, and I think is there anything else you might, sometimes when you just go and have a cup of tea and come back, you might see something which is let's pop in something a bit darker